Katherine Legge will make 7 more NASCAR starts in 2025. Broc Feeney is working on a multi-race deal with Kaulig Racing for 2025. And Denny Hamlin calls for more horsepower on the next-gen car. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got a ton of NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're going to start by talking about Save Mart, as it was announced on Thursday afternoon that Save Mart has extended its title sponsorship with Sonoma with the sponsorship it has with Toyota. Save Mart has been the title sponsor pretty much since the beginning of Sonoma's run back in the 1980s when it began, and it's been there for a very, very long time, and of course has had partnership with Toyota since 2007 when they came in. Originally it was Dodge. Of course, it was called Dodge Save Mart 250 or 350 in 2006, and that has continued through 2007 all the way till 2025. It's a big deal to see that Save Mart is continuing their long-term partnership with the sport and will continue working with Sonoma for the long-term and the foreseeable future. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the National Cup race. As they have a new title sponsor for the Cup event, it's going to be called the Cracker Barrel 400. This is going to be the first time that Cracker Barrel has sponsored a NASCAR Cup Series race since 2001 when they sponsored the Atlanta Cup Series race that Kevin Harvick won his first NASCAR Cup event at. Apparently they have been in a lawsuit back in 2001 because Fox had not been mentioning enough on the broadcast, and they're also expected to do a lot more pop-ups around the track throughout the season, not just in Nashville, but other SMI tracks throughout the season, including, I believe, when we go to Atlanta in the summer a couple months from now. I think it's a massive deal that Cracker Barrel is going to be sponsoring the National Cup Series race. I think it's a massive deal, and I think it's exciting to see that Cracker Barrel will get the opportunity to be back in the sport in a pretty big way. I think it's really exciting overall, in my opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we unfortunately have to take this episode to a sour note, as it was sadly announced on Thursday that 2 people in the industry unfortunately passed away. It was first announced in the early morning on Thursday that Al Pearce has sadly passed away at the age of 82 years old. Al Pearce, for those who do not know, was a long-term journalist in the industry who had covered 56 Daytona 500s and was a Vietnam War veteran as well. Al Pearce was one of the top journalists in the industry for a very, very long time, and is someone that many of the journalists in the industry looked up to, and he would basically be there and you would be able to ask questions and he'd help you along the way. It's a tough day for the industry. Al Pearce was 82 years old. And then shockingly on Thursday, it was also sadly announced that John Edwards had passed away at the age of 53 years old. John Edwards had been the longtime PR representative for Jeff Gordon for 30 years, and then he left Hendrick Motorsports for a couple years and came back and helped Kyle Larson get back into sport about 5 years ago, and he's been with Kyle Larson for the last 5 years. John Edwards is someone that was respected by many in this industry, and many people had a lot of love for the man. Regardless of what field you worked in, he would respect you, he would call you by your last name, and many people had really amazing stories about John Edwards. My thoughts and prayers do go out to the families of Al Pearce and John Edwards and also Shiggy Hattori as well. It's been a tough week for the industry. My thoughts and prayers do go out to Al Pearce and John Edwards' family during this really sad and tragic time. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Shake and Bake Sports. As it was announced on Thursday, shockingly, that there is a new show that's going to be coming out on YouTube called Shake and Bake Sports. This channel is going to be featuring NASCAR Xfinity Series starts. Daniel Dye drives a 10 car for Kaulig Racing. Connor Zilch drives an 88 car for Junior Motorsports. And Jesse Love, who drives the number 2 for Richard Childress Racing. This is going to be a show that we're going to be doing a lot of sports stuff. I think it's going to be debuting on YouTube, I believe, this week. I'm pretty sure in late April, and this is going to be about their friendship and doing some really cool sports stuff, and I think an agency is helping in a pretty big way as well. I think stuff like this is actually really, really intriguing and really exciting for me. So I think seeing young stars, all 3 that have a really good friendship on and off the racetrack, they all really respect each other and race each other, and they're 3 drivers who I think have a lot of potential to really become superstars in the sport. I knew that Jesse Love and Connor Zilch had a really amazing friendship, but I didn't know that Daniel Dye was also really good friends with these guys. So I think a show like this is actually a really exciting thing, all things considered. And overall, I do think it's a pretty big deal to see that we're seeing Connor Zilch, Daniel Dye, and of course Jesse Love have a show. I think it's going to definitely be a really good show to see on YouTube, in my honest and sincere opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Cars Tour. As it was announced on Friday morning or going into the afternoon that the Cars Tour will officially put on the Throwback Classic at Hickory Speedway this upcoming August. The total purse has also been announced and it's a massive deal. It's going to be the most money I think the Cars Tour has ever seen in the history of the event. It's going to be worth $200,000 across the board, with the winner of the race getting around $50,000 to $60,000, and I believe second position will get around $30,000 to $40,000. This is a massive deal for the Cars Tour. The Cars Tour has continued to grow in one of the biggest sports out there in regards to motorsports, and it continues to grow with the racing product generally being really, really good, and it's also had a lot of amazing and fantastic promotion as well. And I think having a series like this continuing to grow and getting bigger purse, I mean, some of the money they've got for this event is better than the Truck Series, all things considered. So I think this is a really, really big deal for sure. And I think it's really awesome nonetheless to see that they're going to be putting the Throwback Classic on at Hickory Speedway. I think the racing should be really good for that event. And I think that the scene at the Cars Tour continues to grow its branding like it is. I think that's really fun to see and pretty awesome that we will see more money going toward the Cars Tour going forward into the future. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Morgan Baird. As it was announced on Thursday that Morgan Baird will be making his NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series debut at Kansas Speedway and will make another start later this year, I believe, at Michigan, as he'll drive the number 22 car for the Ram Brothers Racing in those two races in 2025. Morgan Baird has made select starts in ARCA over the course of the last couple years, and also Morgan Baird has made starts in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, I believe, for My Karma Racing. Will be talked about in some upcoming videos really, really soon. Morgan Baird is someone who I think is actually a very talented race car driver. He's getting into a really decent opportunity here because while Ram Brothers Racing hasn't been the fastest organization in the world, they've shown some potential in 2025, and I do think that Morgan Baird is a talented race car driver who does have potential to do really, really good, and I think Kansas is the perfect track to go to. I believe Morgan Baird has made starts with this team in the past, so I think he does have a solid and a really good opportunity to definitely be very, very competitive for sure. I'm very excited to see how he's going to do in this car because, like I said, I do think he's got a lot of potential, and I think there's a good opportunity here for him to be really strong and really fast in this car. So we'll see what happens in regards to how Morgan Baird is going to do, but to me, I'm excited to see what he can do, and we'll see if Morgan Baird can do a really strong and fantastic job when we do get out to Kansas Speedway in a couple weeks. Really looking forward to that run for him. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Craftsman Truck Series. As it was reported by NASCAR Insights on Friday night after the Truck Series race had concluded that the Craftsman Truck Series has now gone 20 races without having an overtime finish after the Truck Series race at Bristol concluded and Chandler Smith went on to pick up the victory. This is now the record that has been tied, I believe, goes back, I believe, around 2016 or 2017. If the Rockingham Craftsman Truck Series race does end up happening and there's not an overtime finish that takes place, we will have a record for the Craftsman Truck Series. I think this actually is a really big deal, and it shows that the Truck Series has generally been putting on a massive and a pretty clean product out there. And I gotta say that you can say what you want about the Truck Series and where the series isn't as crazy as it used to be, but I actually do think the Truck Series product has been a little bit better because they have been able to not have as many of those races that have been wild and crazy. And I think that's something about the Truck Series. I think it's been a lot better overall. The racing product has generally been a little bit better in the Truck Series, and I think the respect has been up. Since that race at Phoenix last year and since the beginning of last year, I think the racing product's been a lot better, and I hope we do break that record because I think breaking that record would be really, really exciting to see. I really hope we do see that record broken for the Craftsman Truck Series. In my honest opinion, I would love to see something like that broken when we go to Rockingham later this week. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Thomas Annunziata. Now, during his appearance on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio, I believe on Friday or Saturday, Thomas Annunziata revealed that he is planning to make some NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series and ARCA starts in 2025, but has not finalized a race currently at the moment for the 2025 season at ARCA. But he does confirm at this time that he is planning to run the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series race at Lime Rock Park when we go there on June 28th before the NASCAR Cup Series race takes place at Atlanta Motor Speedway. Thomas Annunziata has made starts this year for Cope Racing Family in the NASCAR Xfinity Series, and he's generally kind of struggled this year in the Xfinity Series, but I do think that Thomas Annunziata, with his Trans Am background, I believe he's made starts at this track in the Trans Am Series. I think that's really going to benefit him in a big way, especially if he's in a very competitive ride. And let's say he's even in a decent ride, I could honestly see, because of his road course background, having a chance and opportunity to maybe get like a top 15 or top 20, but it's going to depend on the equipment. When we go to that race, I do think Brent Cruz is going to be the favorite because Brent Cruz is running that race at Lime Rock. He is certainly going to be the favorite because Brent Cruz is an absolute beast on the racetrack, even though he's only like 17 years old. He's a very talented race car driver, does have a lot of potential. But I think that Thomas Sunuzzieta also does have a lot of potential to be really, really strong as well. I think he's going to be a major factor to definitely go to victory lane if he's in the car. We'll see what Thomas can do, but I'm excited to see what he can do realistically because I do think he's got a lot of potential here, and I think he's going to have a great chance and opportunity to be really strong and really fast depending on what team he goes to. We'll see what ride he does end up getting to when we go to Lime Rock in late June. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Dale Jr. As it was announced on Friday and reported by Jenna Fryer originally that Dale Jr. has been officially inducted into the Motorsports Hall of Fame of America for 2026 and joins the class of 2026. It was also revealed that longtime motocross racer Kenny Roberts, who also I believe won some motocross championships in MotoGP in the early 2000s, he was also inducted into the Motorsports Hall of Fame of America as well. Dale Jr., obviously one of the biggest names in motorsports over the course of the last 20-25 years, will be on the broadcast for when we do go to Amazon's broadcast later this year. But Dale Jr. has also been one of the best drivers in NASCAR history. 26 career NASCAR Cup Series wins, won 2 Daytona 500s, has won many races at Talladega, like 6 or 7 races there, and is one of the best super speedway racers of all time, and also won back-to-back Xfinity Series championships in 1998 and 1999 as well. This is well-deserved for Dale Jr. He's earned the right and opportunity to get inducted in this class of Hall of Fame. There's a lot of legends in these groups. I think Mario Andretti's been inducted in this. I think AJ Foyt's been inducted. I do believe that we've seen other people like Jimmy Johnson, Jeff Gordon, Tony Stewart, you name it. Many of those big names have been able to get inducted into the Motorsports Hall of Fame of America. So I think it's a big win for Dale Jr., and I think it's really fun and great to see that he gets the opportunity to get inducted. Congratulations to him on getting inducted into the Motorsports Hall of Fame record. I think it's really exciting for him to get inducted, in my opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about David Starr. As there was a report by JCE.com a couple days ago that David Starr is trying to finalize a 15 to 20 race schedule with Joey Gase Motorsports for the remainder of the 2025 season. David Starr, I believe, has made a couple starts with Joey Gase Motorsports this year and has also made a one-off or two-off start with MBM Motorsports in Garage 66 in 2025. I think he tried to run the race at Daytona earlier this year with MBM, but I believe he failed to qualify for that event, and now is trying to get a race schedule set for the remainder of this year. David Starr had a really solid performance when he ran at Darlington. One of the best runs we've seen from the Joey Gase Motorsports team. He legit ran top 25 in that race, and I believe he finished around 27th or 28th in the event. And even though David Starr is almost 6 years old at this point, he is still getting it done and is very, very competitive. The guy is not a slouch by any stretch of the imagination. When he ran in the Craftsman Truck Series like 20 years ago, the guy was winning a lot of races. I think he won his first truck race around 2002 at Texas Motor Speedway, and he's won a lot of races since that time. And he's been in the sport for many, many years. And even though he's not been in the most best equipment in recent years, I want to see the guy really do really good. I want to see David Starr get into a competitive seat and show some really strong pace and a good speed in a very solid car. So I'm very intrigued to see what he's going to do with Joey Gase Motorsports. I know he's trying to finalize the deal. I know Gray Van Alst has quite a few races scheduled. I think Mason Maggio does have some other races scheduled for the 2025 season. So I do think that, unfortunately, is going to affect the opportunity for David Starr to get into some of those competitive rides and competitive seats. But I hope he does get a competitive seat. He's a really good driver, and I hope Joey Gase Motorsports can improve. So I think David Starr, even though he has not been, the most competitive, I still think he would do a really good job with the team. So we'll see if David Starr does get those opportunities with Joey Gase Motorsports, but I do think he deserves a chance and opportunity to be in a competitive car. We'll see what he does, and we'll see if he does get the chance and opportunity to join Joey Gase Motorsports for a few races in the 2025 season and drive for the remainder of those races. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Ryan Blaney. Now, Ryan Blaney was speaking to media on Saturday before the NASCAR Cup Series race took place at Bristol Motor Speedway, and Ryan Blaney was speaking about going to the White House earlier this week. He said he really enjoyed his time at the White House, kind of found it weird to be part of some press conferences with President Donald Trump, but he thought even though he didn't really speak about regardless of what side you're on, he said it was really cool to be there. This week, we talked about this, I believe, at the end of last week, but of course, Team Penske, many people from Team Penske's organization have won championships. Joe Logano, Ryan Blaney, Joseph Newgarden, who of course won the Indy 500 back-to-back years in 2023 and 2024, and also the Rolex 24 team, which the Porsche Penske team has won the last two Rolex 24s in a row. They were all invited. We didn't see Austin Cindric there or Will Power, Scott McLaughlin there because, of course, they've not won championships with Team Penske in recent years. But I think regardless of how you feel politically about, Donald Trump, I think it's still a really big deal that they brought this back. I thought it was something really, really cool. And I get why people don't like the president of the United States. It's a very controversial thing to like the president, but I really think it's still a big deal regardless to see that you have someone big in the industry as Ryan Blaney and some of those champions in the sport get that chance and opportunity to go to the White House like this. I think it's a big deal, all things considered. And I get, again, that people do not like the president of the United States. I do understand that, but I think bringing a tradition like this back, I think is still really big, and I think it's a massive deal, and I think it's cool to see that Ryan Blaney and many people from the Team Penske group got that chance and opportunity to go and celebrate their championships. They got rid of that when Joe Biden got elected in 2021. I don't think Kyle Larson got to do it when he won the championship, but because Team Penske's won it the last 3 years, they've gotten the chance and opportunity to do it because they have won championships in recent years, and I think at the end of the day, it's still a big deal. Even if you don't agree with this politically, I still think it's a huge deal to see that Ryan Blaney, many people from Team Penske, got that chance and opportunity to go to the White House. I still think it's a really big deal, all things considered. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Sammy Smith. As it was announced on Thursday that Sammy Smith will drive the 07 for Spire Motorsports this week at Rockingham Speedway. I believe this will be the first start that Sammy Smith has ran in the Craftsman Truck Series in 2025. Last year, I believe Sammy Smith made a couple starts. I think he ran at Daytona. I believe he also ran at North Wilkesboro last year, I'm pretty sure, and I believe he ran at the Milwaukee Mile, where his runs were not that great with Spire Motorsports. Now, this actually makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons. Number one, Sammy Smith actually did do the test at Rockingham for Spire Motorsports in the 07 machine before it was announced that the 07 truck was going to be out there for 2025. He was at that test, and he actually was really competitive in that test with top 5 in top 10 speeds. And I think especially with Sammy Smith's experience from that test and being one of the veterans of the sport, because he's now been Xfinity for the last 3 or 4 years at this point, even though he's only around 21 or 22 years old, I do think that Sammy Smith is actually going to do a really good job in that truck. I think he will be very competitive because this year we've seen, of course, Kyle Larson win at Homestead and Kyle Busch win earlier this year at Atlanta, but the Spire Motorsports team, when they've had other drivers like Justin Haley and Michael McDowell get behind the wheel, it's not been the most competitive ride this year. The Spire trucks have not been as strong in 2025, but I do realistically see Sammy Smith having a solid chance and a good opportunity to be really, really strong in this truck. I think he's going to be very fast, and I don't know if this is the only start that he has scheduled for this year, but I do think he's going to be really strong. I think he's going to be very, very competitive, and I do expect that Sammy Smith will contend for the win. I do think the front row trucks are going to be the strongest out there, though, because of how fast they were at the test. Chandler Smith and Lane Riggs were the two quickest trucks, and I think Corey Heim also will be very, very quick as well, but I could see Sammy Smith getting a top 5. I think it's a fantastic opportunity nonetheless for Sammy Smith, and I think he's going to have a really solid chance and a really strong opportunity to go to victory lane. We'll see if he can get the win, because I do think he's got an opportunity to get it done. We'll see what he does with Spire Motorsports when we do head to Rockingham Speedway later this Friday. I think it's going to be a fun race to see the track back on the schedule. We'll see how he does when we do go to Rockingham Speedway. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Spencer Gallagher. As it was shockingly announced on Friday morning that Spencer Gallagher is officially returning to ARCA in 2025. He will drive the number 24 Sigma Performance Services machine this weekend for the ARCA race at Rockingham, which I believe is going to be taking place either Friday night or Saturday afternoon. And then he also will run 3 more races in the number 23 for Sigma Performance Services. GMS Fabrication has been returning all also recently. We'll be talking about that in a video you're going to see later this week. But we will also make 3 starts for them, I believe, at Talladega. I think a couple other races like Iowa later this year, and there's one more race that I think was Bristol that was scheduled for Spencer Gallagher. This, I believe, will be the first time that Spencer Gallagher has made some competitive starts in NASCAR or ARCA in general since around 2018 or 2019. Of course, I think he won the ARCA, not the ARCA, the Xfinity Talladega race back in 2018. But then around that time, I think he partied way too hard, and he unfortunately got suspended for a bit. But he's been back in the sport working with Legacy Motor Club and GMS Racing. I think he's been a driver coach over at Sigma as well, and he's been helping the Chevrolet camp over there as well. I think this is a really, really big deal. And when you think about the ARCA fields, they're not as strong going into this year, right? So I think Spencer, even though he's not been in a competitive seat in recent years and hasn't really been racing too much, I do think that he's got a solid chance and opportunity to be very, very competitive. I expect him to be a contender for the wins. I think the Sigma Performances teams have shown speed. Tyler Reif was really, really competitive at Phoenix back a couple weeks ago, like at race 4 or 5 of the season. And I think he's generally a really talented driver, even though he hasn't been in a car in quite some time. I think that he will have a car that will be very, very strong. I think Brendan Butterbean Queen, though, is going to be good. I think Gio Ruggiero is running one of the races there. I do believe Brent Cruz is running Rockingham with Joe Gibbs Racing, so I think he's absolutely the favorite. He won his first ARCA racer, first Joe Gibbs Racing ARCA win at Phoenix earlier, so I do think he's going to be good, but I think Brendan Butterbean Queen also is going to be a massive threat and serious contender to definitely get it done. So I expect Spencer to be really strong and really, really fast, and I think it's going to be fun to see what he can do in that car when he does run an ARCA. It's a great opportunity to drive for the Sigma team. This team has shown some good speed, and I think it's going to be fun to see what he can do in that car when we do go to the ARCA race. I'm excited to see what Spencer can do in the few races, and I think it's fun nonetheless to see that Spencer Gallagher is back in ARCA. Looking forward to see what he can do when he does run those races, especially later this week for the team and organization. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Legacy Motor Club. As it was written by Dustin Long from NBC Sports, that Legacy Motor Club's motion for preliminary injunction versus Rickrow Racing on the charter deal is scheduled for later this week on April 17th. This will be a court date that is going to be set, and the hearing will take place in regards to this. So, what is going on? Well, a couple weeks ago on April Fool's Day, it was announced that Legacy Motor Club was suing Rickrow Racing in regards to a charter sale that had not gone through, or a sale that basically kind of fell through. Apparently, it was reported that Legacy Motor Club had paid $45 million for that charter. They had started talking in early January, and they had originally struck a deal in the first or second week of March. But then Rickrow Racing was backing out of the deal because Rickrow basically said even though Legacy does claim that Rickrow Racing had signed the agreement and they were ready to go get this deal signed for 2026. Rick Ware and Rickrow Racing are saying that they actually signed a deal for 2027, while Legacy Motor Club is saying that the deal had not been signed for 2027. Instead, it was for 2026. If they could prove in there for that preliminary injunction, they also had asked for a temporary restraining order as well, which they were granted that temporary restraining order, which Rickrow Racing did oblige, and they said they were playing by the rules on that front, and they were not going to back out of the deal, even though they weren't agreeing with everything going on there. For Legacy Motor Club here, the reason I think they're doing this is prepare for potential manufacturer change. We're going to talk about this with GMS Racing's future, but I think when you look at Legacy Motor Club, they're trying to become a 3-car team for the 2026 season. We know there's a lot of rumors about Dodge maybe making an attempt to come back to the sport as early as 2027 in the NASCAR Cup Series. We do know they're likely getting back in the Truck Series in 2026. We'll talk about that coming up soon. But I think for Legacy for 2026, I do think Toyota is trying to help them for 1 year. And I think the big name comes around as Corey Heim. I think you look at Corey Heim. We all know Corey Heim is a very talented race car driver, and he absolutely should be in the Cup Series full time. My theory is that at least for 2026, they're going to loan Corey Heim out to Legacy Motor Club in a third full-time seat. Because you look at 2311, Bubba Wallace is under a contract through 2026. Tyler Reddick has a pretty long contract. I think his contract almost goes through the rest of the decade, I'm pretty sure. And Riley Herbst has a contract through 2026 or 2027. And also Riley Herbst's family owns that charter that's gone over to 2311. So Riley Herbst would not lose that seat, even though Riley Herbst has been really struggling this year in the NASCAR Cup Series. He is not going to lose that seat in any way, shape, or form. But I think about this charter. And I think that if this preliminary injunction goes through, if they're able to get that preliminary injunction, they would be able to get that charter. And I think that they're going to unfortunately have to be forced to have that charter sold to them, because if they're proven in court that they bought the charter and they basically kind of went back on the deal even if the agreement had been signed, I think this is big for Legacy Motor Club because they're going to win. We're going to find out later this week on that because we're going to be hearing about these charter deals coming really, really soon. But to me, when I look at this situation, if it's clear as day that they wrote it and signed every document and every single page, I think it's going to be a slam dunk for Legacy Motor Club, and they're going to have a third charter. Then you have RFK, who might have to get involved in this, unfortunately, which would be really disappointing if they lost that charter, because Rick Ware could somehow back out of their deal, because I believe Ryan Preece does have a multi-year contract with RFK and that lease charter for Rick Ware Racing. So that would be really unfortunate if something like that did happen. It'll be something to keep your eyes on for sure, and we'll find out more later this week in regards to that, but I still think it's a really big deal, and we'll figure it out really, really soon as an industry. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the 2311 Racing and Front Row Motorsports NASCAR lawsuit. Now, we've talked about a lot about this lawsuit in recent weeks, but we've had some updates over the course of the last week or so. 2311 and Front Row and many of the lawyers from the side of there were asking a lot of leagues earlier this week, including the NFL, the NBA, the NHL, the MLB, and also Formula One, about their financial stuff. And mainly Formula One, they were asking about the Concord Agreement and also about what the split is in regards to that said Concord Agreement. Well, it was reported later this week, I believe by Toby Christie and Bob Pockers as well, that NASCAR and 2311 and Front Row had actually asked IndyCar about their financial system as well. They have asked IndyCar to the list of leagues that 2311 Racing and Front Row have gone to court. And what they're asking for is what is a distribution in regards to the Leaders Circle money. The Leaders Circle, for those who don't know, the top 22 teams in IndyCar get Leaders Circle money, and the higher you do finish in the points, the more money you get. If you're not part of that Leaders Circle, you do not get the money. And even though there are 25 charter teams in IndyCar, because they brought the charter system in for this year, which I think they're calling franchises at this time because they don't want to get into lawsuits with the charter situation with NASCAR right now, they're calling it that at this time. There's 25 charters that are available, and they're only being used currently at the moment. IndyCar, from what I did see, they did not oblige, and they're saying that they're not going to be handing over their finances. Of course, Roger Penske is involved in NASCAR, owns a team in Cup, and a lot of people that do work over there in IndyCar also have some affiliation with NASCAR, so I don't think that they're going to back out and send the money over. The reason that 2311 and Front Row are asking them is to try to figure out what they can present in court for the discovery process. All the discovery stuff, I believe, is due around June 10th or June 11th, so a couple months from now. And then you also got the appeal going on for this side of things, because remember, there's the appeal in regards to preliminary injunction, where Judge Kenneth Bell took over at the end of last year. He had granted the preliminary injunction in the motion where 2311 and Front Row would have their charters for the 2025 season, that being, of course, the charters for Bubba Walls, Tyler Reddick, and Riley Herbst, and Zane Smith, Noah Gragson, and Todd Gillen for the season. And all those drivers, even Corey Haim as well, have charter provisions in their contracts, so they would have had to have a charter. Otherwise, that every single one of those drivers would have had to find a new ride for the 2025 season, and some of those drivers may not have been competing in the first place for 2025. I think for 2311 and Front Row, this discovery process is certainly going to be interesting. We know that the trial date is set for December 9th, so about 7 or 8 months from now at this point, and I think that that could be a major change for the sport. Jimmy Johnson has brought up as of recently that there's a potential cost cap that is coming really, really soon, and I do think it's going to have a pretty big effect on the sport going forward in the future, depending on what that cost cap is. Or is it going to be affecting on like technology, among other things? We're not sure. But we know there's a very good chance and possibility that the sport is going to change in a major way, regardless of the outcome of this lawsuit. I mean, it was announced in the last couple of weeks or so that we've got a commissioner in the sport that has taken place. And I think that's something that not many people talk about. But the commissioner, we've got Steve Phelps has become the commissioner. It's not like a commissioner like we have in the NBA for Adam Silver, like in the NFL for Roger Goodell, and all the other ones like Rob Manfred for the MLB as well. But you're starting to hear things about a cost cap, and it's very similar to what Formula One has. We know they're wanting a little bit more power and bigger seat at the table. We see it in Formula One. They do have a bigger seat at the table. If a cost cap comes in, I do worry that the racing product may not get better, though. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens in regards to the remainder of the lawsuit. To me, especially with the racing product and stuff, I really hope we do see some change in the sport. So I think the sport absolutely needs to have some big changes, and I think the racing product maybe will get better, but I'm not sure if it's going to get better with that. So we'll see what happens in regards to that in the future of the lawsuits. I think there's going to be a lot of coverage coming out on it very, very soon. I think there's some big things that might get revealed in the not so distant future, including during the discovery process, which NASCAR really did not want to go to the discovery process, but the teams wanted it, and the judge is forcing them to go to that discovery process, which is not the most shocking thing, in my opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the first of three major stories on today's episode, as we're talking about Denny Hamlin. Now, Denny Hamlin on Thursday or Friday before the NASCAR Cup Series race took place at Bristol Motor Speedway, Denny Hamlin was on SiriusXM NASCAR Radio on late Thursday, and he talked about potentially of NASCAR adding more horsepower. And Denny Hamlin went on that show, and he is asking and telling NASCAR that they need to add more horsepower to the next-gen cars. He says that NASCAR needs to try to add more horsepower and at least as of this moment go up to 750 horsepower, because he does believe that the racing product, at least with 750 horsepower, might actually get a little bit better. Especially after today's NASCAR Cup Series race at Bristol Motor Speedway, where Kyle Larson led almost every single lap in the event. I 100% agree with Denny Hamlin here. I absolutely think we need to add more horsepower to the next-gen car. We have seen Goodyear do the best they can, and at this point, I'm not going to be asking Goodyear to do as much, because Goodyear still needs to be playing. I'm not saying that they don't need to, but they need to be involved for sure. But we've seen Goodyear foot the bill, and they've had to do a lot of the heavy lifting at this point. NASCAR has been basically not adding horsepower, and NASCAR's excuse is the fact, hey, look, we're waiting for a new OEM and new manufacturer come in. While there's been a lot of reports about Dodge and reports about Honda being interested in coming into sport, and we know it's very likely that Dodge is probably coming in, at least as of now, to the Craftsman Truck Series in 2026 with some organizations that we don't know at this point, I don't think that we need to wait at this point. If we decide to do testing, which I think the biggest thing we need to do is we need to at least try to do some testing, because Goodyear has done all they can at this point. They said if they go much more softer on these tires, they're going to have a situation like the 2008 Brickyard 400. I mean, look at today's race, for example. Kyle Larson almost led the whole entire race. We thought we were getting a tire race because we saw all the tires falling off as much as they did. And we got none of that tire race today. The race today was not very good. We've been saying this for the longest time. The engine builders, the people from Yates and Ford, the people from Chevrolet and Jim Campbell, and the people from ECR, and even David Wilson have said we can go up 100 horsepower, even 150 horsepower, and the engine bills haven't changed. We've heard from people in the industry that have said the engine bills have not changed, the engine bills have not gotten any cheaper. So at this particular moment and point, we need to be looking at adding horsepower to the next-gen car. And honestly, I don't think 750 is enough. I think we should go up to 850 or even 900 at this point. We need to let those engines open because we've done enough aero changes to the next-gen car. We've done enough changes on the diffuser, which I think removing the diffuser would be one of the solutions that I would have for the next-gen car. We've done all these aero changes. We've done all this. We've done all that. We need to look at adding horsepower at this point. This is year 4 of the next-gen car. We have not seen much improvement at all at these short tracks. Today's race at Bristol was a travesty. It's one of the worst races in NASCAR history. One of the worst Bristol races. Not as bad as the one where Larson almost led every lap. And again, it's not because Kyle Larson dominated and led almost every single lap, but it's just right now because the racing product at these short tracks right now is not sustainable and it's not good. Most people are going to go to these races, and I think the sooner we can look at adding horsepower to the car, the better it's going to be, because we're all talking about adding another next-gen car. We've only had 4 years with this car. We've got to do something at this point. And if the horsepower doesn't improve it, at least do a test. If it doesn't say, if NASCAR basically decides, hey, this doesn't improve anything, then at least we tried something. But NASCAR, for some weird reason and some strange reason, won't make the necessary change to add horsepower to the next-gen car. At this point, we got to add horsepower. That's the thing we got to do, because I'm tired of the excuses from NASCAR. We need horsepower in this car, and I really hope we do, because people like Kyle Busch have said it, people like Chase Elliott, Kyle Larson, among others in the industry, have said it, and people that are big in the industry, like Boze Tatarevic, has said the same thing as well. Add horsepower to this car. The racing is not good on short tracks right now, and it needs to absolutely change, in my opinion. And now we're going to head jump on to the next major story in today's episode as we're talking about Broc Feeney and Will Brown. As it was reported by Speed Cafe, a major outlet in Australia and New Zealand as well, that according to a report that they had on Thursday afternoon, Broc Feeney and Will Brown are working on deals to race in NASCAR in 2025. First, let's talk about Broc Feeney. Broc Feeney, of course, was at Martinsville Speedway with Shane Van Gisbergen as a guest. He was spotted at Martinsville Speedway, and according to reports, Broc Feeney is working on a deal to make not just one, but multiple starts in NASCAR in 2025. So which team is Broc Feeney looking to race for? Well, as many of you probably saw in the title, Broc Feeney is working on a multi-race deal to race in the NASCAR Xfinity Series with Kaulig Racing. Kaulig Racing is working on having a fourth car in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Of course, they have 3 full-time entries this year. Daniel Dye in the 10 car, Josh Williams in the 11, and Christian Eckes in the number 16 machine. Christian Eckes, of course, coming into this year, did end up replacing AJ Allmendinger, who moved back up to the NASCAR Cup Series this year, just like Shane Van Gisbergen moved up to the Cup Series full-time, who, of course, drove for Kaulig Racing in the number 97 machine last year. He's working on a multi-race deal with the team. Now, we don't know exactly which races he is going to run. It does sound like the Chicago is on the tip of his tongue for 2025, and I've heard Portland is another possibility as well for him going into the year. It sounds like it will be a fourth car for this team in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. Broc Feeney, for those who do not know, is a driver who's only 22 years old currently at the moment, but the guy has Red Bull affiliation, and Broc Feeney is really, really good. He's only been in this series since 2022, but he's made a lot of starts. He's won 13 races across like 200 starts in supercars and finished second last year to Will Brown in the championship. He's really, really good, and I know there's been some talk about Broc Feeney maybe wanting to transition over to NASCAR. The one positive about Broc Feeney, compared to guys like Shane Van Gisbergen and even Marcus Ambrose as well, Broc Feeney is very, very young. He'd be someone who absolutely would have the opportunity and chance to come over, and I think he would transition really, really quickly at such a young age, because the next-gen car is very similar to the supercar, which is definitely could be a positive or a negative. It's up for your interpretation at this point, but I do think that Broc Feeney coming over racing NASCAR would be a big deal. And honestly, even if he got a start in the Cup Series, I do think he'd be really competitive in a Cup car. I think he'd have a chance and opportunity to run up front in it for sure. And I think it'd be really fun to see him get that chance and opportunity with Kaulig, because I think he's very, very talented. He's really, really good. He's been winning a lot of races in supercars in recent years, and I think he's absolutely ready, especially with some of those races not conflicting. I would love to see him have that chance and opportunity to race for Kaulig and Xfinity. I think he'd do a really awesome and great job, and I think he honestly would have a chance to win Chicago. But you've got Connor Zilisch and Shane Van Gisbergen, who are the 2 best road course racers running that event, and I think some other Cup guys are looking to run the event as well. But that is not all. According to that same report as well, Will Brown is working on a deal to race for Kaulig Racing in a third car for the team in the Cup Series race at the Chicago Street Course. It was reported in the offseason that Will Brown was looking to make a couple starts in the NASCAR Cup Series with Richard Childress Racing in the number 33 machine. And one of those races have been the Chicago Street Course. Unfortunately, it seems like the deal has fallen through for him to run the Chicago Street Course event in the NASCAR Cup Series, as Austin Hill is making starts for the team at that event. Of course, he made a start earlier this year at Darlington and didn't run fantastic in the machine, but he did have top 30 speed, all things considered. Will Brown did make his NASCAR Cup Series debut last year when he did run the number 33 machine at Sonoma, had top 5 speed on the times, and was running in the top 10 early in the event. He got caught up in a couple incidents and unfortunately had electrical issues that took him out of the race, and he fell out of the event. And I think running for Kaulig, he'd actually have a better chance than driving for RCR. Kaulig's road course program is a lot better. And remember, Shane Van Gisbergen drove a Kaulig machine, and he had the fastest car in the event and qualified on the front row with Kyle Larson in the event. But the rain came in, and Shane Van Gisbergen got taken out. But I think Will Brown running the Chicago Street Course would absolutely be really, really fun. I think he'd have a really good chance and opportunity to win, especially with his experience, and I think he'll be up front for sure going to the victory, and it'll be another car in the field. We know Corey Hyman is going to be driving a car for the team. I believe driving the number 67 car for 2311 at Chicago. We've heard maybe that Connor Zilisch might drive the Chicago Street Course for the NASCAR Cup Series race. I think there's a couple other names like Josh Bilicki who are rumored to be running for Garage 66 in the event. So we'll have to see what other drivers do end up running. But I think Will Brown coming over will be really fun. I think it'd be really, really exciting. And I also think it's pretty cool that you've got more of these drivers from the supercar scene coming over and wanting to race. I think it's a really fun for the sport overall as a whole, and I think we need to see these guys come over and have a lot of fun. They've seen its success at SVG's. Hattie's won 3 Xfinity races in a Cup event, and I think he'd have a really good chance and opportunity to be really good. So we'll see what Broc Feeney and Will Brown can do, but I'm excited to see what both of them can do when they do get these deals finalized. They're not officially done at this time, but I think they should have deals coming really, really soon in the series. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode as we're talking about Katherine Legge. As it was announced on Thursday afternoon, that Katherine Legge has officially confirmed that she will not be running the Indy 500 in 2025 and is backed away from doing it despite having a deal for the year. Instead, she is going to be making more starts in NASCAR in 2025 as she has 7 more starts scheduled in NASCAR this year. As her sponsor, Elf Cosmetics, which has been with her over the last year or so, they're going to be associated with her in all 7 of those events. She will drive for Jordan Anderson Racing in 7 of those events, or 6 of those races. Her first start actually will be this weekend in the number 32 machine for Jordan Anderson Racing, and she also is going to run the Xfinity Series race at Charlotte Motor Speedway. In addition to that, it was also confirmed that she will run the Mexico City NASCAR Cup Series event. It is unknown at this time which team she is going to drive for in that event, but I have to think more than likely it's going to be Live Fast Motorsports like it was the last time. We all know that Katherine Legge did make her NASCAR Cup Series debut at Phoenix Raceway in the number 78 machine for Live Fast Motorsports, and to be honest, it was not her best ambitions. She did not have a really good weekend. She did unfortunately crash a couple times. She spun out during the NASCAR Cup Series event at Phoenix, and then of course she did end up causing a wreck that got Daniel Suarez involved. It caused a lot of media attention, and a lot of people in the industry were kind of clowning on her and were not very happy about what happened there, including some drivers as well. I think this is the way that she honestly should have started. I think Katherine Legge should have gone for multiple races, and I think making her first return to the Xfinity Series on an oval would have been a better strategy. Jordan Anderson Racing is a solid team and organization. We've seen this team be very, very competitive over the years. We've seen Parker Retzlaff win poles for this team. And we've also seen Jeb Burton get multiple wins at super speedways. This is not a team that's a slouch. Now, granted, Austin Green has had trouble making races, but I have to think that she would be able to be eligible to get in the event. And I think the PCP, or not past champions original, but I think that she would do a decent job. Katherine Legge is no slouch on the track. Yes, I know Katherine Legge hasn't won any IndyCar races, and she hasn't won any big events at this point, but I do think that Katherine Legge overall is a solid race car driver. She's won races in IMSA. She's been in competitive equipment. And I think that Katherine Legge would have a decent chance and an opportunity here to show what she's got. And honestly, running a road course race, I know they were talking about running her Circuit of the Americas, and that deal unfortunately fell through at the last minute. But I think that she probably should have waited a little bit to make her NASCAR Cup debut. But I want to see her succeed. I want to see her do a really good job in the Xfinity Series. And I would have to think, like I said, outside of the Rockingham and Charlotte races, we have not had any confirmation on what other race that she is going to enter at this time. But I want to see her succeed. I want to see drivers that are females come into the sport and have success. I know we all kind of talk about Hailie Deegan, right? But Hailie Deegan, she was not very good in NASCAR, right? She struggled in the Xfinity Series. She wasn't ready to move up to Xfinity. We kind of found that out, and we've seen how Harrison Burton's done. And you see Tony Breidinger. Tony Breidinger has struggled in trucks this year. She had a top 20 run going at Bristol, but that's been her biggest highlight at this point. And then, of course, you think about some of the other drivers. We know there's some really good drivers out there that are females. You think about Jade Avedissian, who's been tearing it up in the Wing Outlaw Modifieds. And you think about, Isabel Robusto. She's been very competitive in ARCA. Should have won a couple ARCA West races last year and was really competitive in the select ARCA races she made last year and even won a pole at Kansas. I want to see people like Katherine have success. She's a driver that a lot of people do respect in this industry. And I think some of the criticism was justified, but I don't think it was all in Katherine Legge, unfortunately. She kind of got thrown to the wolves, and I think the lack of practice really, unfortunately, affected her during the weekend at Phoenix. I think if she had a little bit more practice, I think she could have done a much better job at Phoenix. But I think the way that she's doing it this time around, I think it is a lot better way to go, because I think that she is a lot more prepared going around this time, and I think it's going to lead her actually having a little bit more success. My realistic goal for Katherine, just get experience. Just keep your nose clean the whole entire run, because we saw Casey Mears run at Martinsville. He kept his nose clean. Yes, he was one of the slowest cars on the track, but he got out of the way, and I think NASCAR is going to be fine with that. And I have to think down the road she's going to be able to get approved to run other types of tracks. She's probably going to get approved to run, let's say, some of the intermediates in NASCAR down the road. I think having that experience, it was a learning experience for her, and she talked about it in interviews. She was a big deal for some of the negative reasons for sure. And again, I just don't think that Katherine Legge should have absolutely been racing in that Cup event, but at the same time, she deserves to be out there. She's a driver that's not untalented. She can drive a race car. I get why some people don't like her as much, and I get some people thinking that she shouldn't be out there, but I think she absolutely should be out there. She is someone who's shown a lot of potential in other forms of racing and other series, and I do believe that she'll have a chance and an opportunity to do a lot better with the Jordan Anderson Racing team and organization. I hope she can do a really good job. I want to see her have some success, and again, I hope she does the best she can out on the track. We'll see what she can do as she will get to run some more starts this year. We'll see what she can do with the Jordan Anderson Racing team and see what she does with the Cup start. Again, I do think it's going to be with Live Fast Motorsports more than likely. I don't think it's going to be with a team like Trackhouse with Project 91. We don't know if they're running at this point, but I have to think they're looking at running Connor Zillich from Mexico as well. We'll see what happens on that front, but I hope Katherine Legge can do a really solid job when she does run the events later this year. So, that is going to be today's long NASCAR news and motorsports news episode. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. List description below that, and comment your thoughts below on today's episode. You think Katherine Legge will have a much better go this time around in those races? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and what are your thoughts about Broc Feeney looking to make some starts in NASCAR this year? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. In a couple hours, we are going to see a second NASCAR news video. We've got a lot of news still to catch up on that I did not cover in today's episode. Tomorrow on the channel, you're likely going to see the entry list for the NASCAR Xfinity Series race at Rockingham Speedway. And we're also probably going to have some other content dropping as well, along with the Xfinity Series race picks. And then on Wednesday, we'll probably have a NASCAR news video more than likely. And then, of course, we should have the Truck Xfinity and all the other race picks dropping later this week. Friday night, we're going to have the Truck Series race review. Saturday, we're going to have, of course, the race review for the Xfinity Series race, and we'll have reactions from Rockingham as well. We're also going to have content coming up here like Haley Ding and Shane Van Gisbergen, Cards, Kurt Busch, Kyle Busch, Junior Motorsports, Bubba Wallace, Chandler Smith, Eric Almirola, Kyle Larson, Chase Elliott, Sheldon Creed, Sam Mayer, Cletus Farm, Matt DiBenedetto, Dodge, Ford, Honda, you name it. We'll talk about all that on the channel in the coming days and weeks. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.